The next thing I want to talk about is power. Um, Power is the rate in which energy is either being produced or consumed. So, first of all, we know what energy is. Energy is a joule. Excuse me. It's a joule. Okay. So when we talk about power, so power is the rate in which energy is either being consumed or produced. We're going to talk about a joule per second. Okay? That is actually what we call a watt, after James Watt. Okay? Mr. Steam Engine himself. Okay, so when we talk about power, we're going to talk about watts. So you look at your home and you're consuming kilowatts. You look at a light bulb, excuse me, its power rating is in watts. Like these light bulbs are 60 watts. Okay, Flories are different values, but that's the rate in which it's consuming power. Obviously, it's not producing, it's not consuming power. It's the rate in which it's consuming energy. Okay, so we're looking at wattages as a consumption or a production of power. I mean, we can talk about power plants and these kilowatt power and all that other stuff that's being produced. Okay, so that's what a wattage is. It's the rate in which energy is being either consumed or produced. Now, what you end up getting in your bill every month when you talk about energy consumption is the energy that you've consumed. So they charge you as kilowatts per hour, kilowatt hours. Sorry, my brain is still not working right. So a kilowatt hour actually translates into an energy. It's a unit of energy. It translates not directly into a joule, but with a little bit of conversions, it turns into a joule. Okay, so when you're charged at the end of the month, the rate of your consumption is in the kilowatt. The total amount of energy that you consume is going to be in joules, or this kilowatt hour that they bill you for. Okay, so that's power. Now, it's a joule per second. So you can think of it as a energy per second. Okay, or if you're talking kinetic energy or potential energy, you can think of it as PE per second or KE per second. It doesn't really matter. It's just the amount of energy that's either being consumed or produced per second. Okay. In the case of a light bulb, it's actually electrical energy, which I haven't given you the equation for electrical energy. We're all just going to kind of throw those into circuits. So that's one we're going to skip for now. So it's just basically that. Now, if you think about it as work and not energy, because work and energy are pretty much the same, you're talking force times displacement per second. Okay? So when we talk about work, we use that equation. Okay, the rate in which I do work. So when we talk about horsepower, we talk about power that's being generated by a vehicle. We think of it as force force times displacement. How much force it can apply over a displacement. So that's what we think of power. That's what we think of. When we talk about vehicles, we're thinking of this idea of work. Well, here's something that's really kind of cool. So take it as I'm driving along on the highway and I'm experiencing, here's my car, driving along on the, hey look, it's a Scion. Driving along on, it's not my car, I don't have a Scion. So I'm driving along on the highway and I'm overcome by air resistance. I've got all this air blowing at me and it's pushing my car in this direction. Okay, my car is pushing in this direction with the force, and we can call that a force applied. Okay, so we can say that the power that car has to have in order to keep moving at a constant velocity is going to be this force times displacement per second. Well, I'm not going to be measuring necessarily how far I'm traveling and how long it takes me. Well, wait a minute. How far I'm traveling and how long it's going to take me? Well, that's something else. So if I want to talk about the power that car can create, I think of it this way. the force that it's needing to apply to overcome this other force times the velocity. So, cars like Priuses, where they have the nice aerodynamic shapes, in this situation don't experience a lot of air resistance, so they don't necessarily need to generate a lot of force. So they don't necessarily need to do a lot of work. And if they don't do a lot of work, they're not consuming energy at such a high rate. That's why air resistance is such a great thing. Aerodynamics, not air resistance. And that's also why you get things like moving vans and semis, which have to overcome a great deal of air resistance. So they have to apply a great deal of force in order to keep up with that velocity. So they have to do a great deal of work, and that means also they have to consume a great deal of energy per second. So aerodynamics is a great way in which to conserve energy, simply because when we're talking about air resistance as an object moving along on this road and it has to cut through all this air, that air resistance, that numerical value for it, is smaller for objects that have high aerodynamics. That's why you see some of these high efficiency vehicles like the Prius and like the Insight by Honda as these tremendously aerodynamic objects. They've spent a fortune just trying to measure that. I mean, take it to the race car business. What's the reason why they don't have headlights on race cars? They're all stickers. They're not really headlights. It's for this air resistance. So in order for it to have a smaller value for that force, therefore having to do less work, therefore having to consume less energy, they make it one solid body so that there's not any cracks or crannies for the air to get in there and to create turbulence, and then just put stickers on there. Okay, so that's why they do it. It's to reduce this force that is needed to move that car at that velocity through this air. Now, if there was no air, then there would be no purpose for aerodynamics, and this object would continue to accelerate. I mean, if you can avoid any kind of friction on the system, you just go for it. Okay, so that's power. It's the rate in which energy is being produced or consumed. Now, production of power is a little more complicated, and you need a little more understanding of electricity and magnetism to actually talk about the production of power. Okay? But that's power.